9 of Britain's most senior generals, men who have led our nation in war, have just declared that the Prime Minister is a direct threat to our national security. They've broken ranks. They've sounded the alarm. They've signed a letter that amounts to a vote of no confidence not just in Keir Starmer, but in the entire rotten system he represents. Our armed forces, the very shield of this nation, are being systematically dismantled from within, hollowed out, shackled and demoralized by the very government sworn to uphold them. Our Royal Navy, the envy of the world for centuries, now has warships sailing without their primary missile systems because the MOD can't afford to buy them. Our army is smaller than it has been since the Napoleonic Wars, struggling to even field a single combat-ready division. This isn't budget cuts. This is castration. The question is no longer if our enemies will strike, but who will be left to fight back when they do. This is the story you will not hear on the BBC. They'll call it a disagreement. A political spat. They will lie to you with their calm, condescending voices, because the truth is too terrifying. This isn't an oversight. It isn't a mistake. This is a deliberate, calculated act of sabotage against the British military. The 9 4-star generals, men like General Sir Richard Dannatt and General Lord Richards, former chiefs of the Defence Staff, they call it a lawfare. A pretty name for a dirty war. A war being waged not with bullets and bombs, but with courtrooms and foreign judges. A war where our own soldiers are the designated targets. Keir Starmer, the former human rights lawyer, has brought his old playbook into number 10. He is shackling our warriors with the very legal chains he once used to defend our enemies. He is infecting the military with a doctrine of defeatism imported directly from the European Convention on Human Rights, a charter written in the comfortable salons of post-war Europe, now being used as a weapon against the very soldiers who guarantee the freedom of those salons. It's a suicide pact. A doctrine that says the rights of a terrorist planting an IED are equal to the rights of the British soldier trying to stop him. Every soldier, on every battlefield, now has to look over his shoulder. Not for the enemy in front of him, but for the lawyer Keir Starmer has placed behind him. They are being told to make split-second, life-or-death decisions while mentally consulting a human rights textbook. The generals are clear, this is paralyzing our forces. It creates a chilling effect on commanders, who are now terrified to give the orders necessary to win, for fear of a summons to The Hague 20 years from now. It's causing an exodus from the SAS and the SBS, our elite warriors, who refuse to operate with their hands tied behind their backs. It's a green light to every terrorist and tin-pot dictator on the planet. They are rubbing their hands with glee, watching as Britain willingly disarms itself, sacrificing its fighting spirit on the altar of political correctness. This is a policy of surrender, orchestrated by a man who has never understood the meaning of service, and whose real allegiance is to the globalist courts of Strasbourg, not the sovereign people of Great Britain. This is the devastating reality of Starmer's two-tier Britain. A country where the heroes are punished and the enemies are protected. A nation turned upside down. On one side, you have the British soldier. A young man or woman who writes a blank check to this country, payable with their life. They follow orders, they fight in our name, they stand on the thin line between civilization and chaos. And for their service, what is their reward? Decades later, they are dragged from their homes. Imagine it. A knock on the door at 6 a.m. A grandfather, in his 70s or 80s, frail, a man who served in the Royal Green Jackets, who watched his friends blown apart in the back streets of Belfast, is now being treated like a war criminal by a generation that has never known a day of real hardship, all for a pat on the head from Sinn Féin. He is hounded by taxpayer-funded lawyers, the same legal aid system that is denied to so many ordinary Britons. His name is dragged through the mud, his final years consumed by fear and crippling legal bills. His reward is the living nightmare of betrayal. And if he's lucky enough to avoid the courtroom, what then? We have 6,000 homeless veterans on our streets tonight. 6,000 men and women who fought for our flag, now sleeping under cardboard boxes and filthy blankets, forgotten and abandoned by the state they served. Men suffering from injuries you can't see. They ask for change on the same streets where politicians who betrayed them are chauffeured past in taxpayer-funded cars. They are invisible to the state, a national embarrassment to be swept under the carpet. That is one side of the coin. That is the value Keir Starmer's Britain places on its heroes. Now look at the other. While our veterans freeze and starve, 4-star hotels across the country are filled to the brim with illegal migrants. 400 arrived on one day alone, ferried ashore like conquering heroes by our own border force. They are given a warm bed, a swimming pool, a gym, 3 hot meals a day, legal aid, healthcare, dental treatment, and spending money. While our pensioners are told to turn down the heating to save a few quid, young men of fighting age who have paid traffickers thousands of pounds are given everything on a plate. No questions asked. The cost? Over £8 million a day. Money drained from our schools, our NHS, our military, to fund this comfortable lifestyle. This isn't compassion. It's an invasion, and we are paying for it. This is the moral inversion. This is the great humiliation. The IRA terrorist, the very people our soldiers fought and died to stop, could soon be sitting on Starmer's legacy commission, judging the actions of the soldiers who defended us from their bombs and their bullets. Think about that. The bomber passing judgment on the bomb disposal expert. The system protects the lawbreaker, the illegal migrant, the terrorist sympathizer. But it hunts the British soldier. It persecutes the veteran. It spits on the memory of the fallen. This isn't just a two-tier system, it is a declaration of war on the very soul of Britain. It is a system that rewards our enemies and punishes our defenders. It is a calculated, deliberate policy of national self-hatred. And it is unforgivable. The architect of this national disgrace is Keir Starmer. A man who laid a wreath at the cenotaph while the veterans who stood just feet away booed him in disgust. They have long memories. They know who he is. Remember, this is the same Keir Starmer who, as Director of Public Prosecutions, refused to prosecute the eco-zealots who desecrated the cenotaph. But a soldier who served his country 40 years ago? He's public enemy number one. He surrounds himself with men like David Lammy, his foreign secretary, a man who has questioned Britain's claim to the Falkland Islands. Their entire worldview is built on apologizing for Britain. This is the man whose Attorney General, Lord Hermer, once represented Gerry Adams, the former leader of Sinn Féin. Let that sink in. The government's top lawyer once worked for the political wing of the IRA. This is the leader of a party whose former deputy, Angela Rayner, couldn't even be bothered to spell remembrance correctly in a tribute, a pathetic Freudian slip that reveals their true priorities. A party whose activists and MPs openly mock our veterans as Nazis and warmongers for daring to feel betrayed. This is a man who wants to scrap the protections for our Northern Ireland veterans, meagre as they are, opening the floodgates for a generation of witch hunts, all to appease Sinn Féin and the Republican movement. It was his own veterans minister, a former soldier himself, reduced to a gibbering wreck in Parliament, unable to give a straight answer on the most basic questions about the welfare of his own community. If the minister in charge doesn't have the facts, it's because the government doesn't want you to have them. This isn't incompetence. This is contempt. Starmer embodies the sneering, metropolitan political class that sees our military not as a source of pride, but as a problem to be managed. A useful prop for a parade, but a source of deep shame when the fighting gets dirty. He is a coward, hiding behind the robes of foreign judges, sacrificing our security on the altar of his own woke ideology. And our enemies are watching. Putin, Xi, the mullahs in Iran. They don't see a serious leader. They see a weakling. A man who prosecutes his own soldiers. They are not afraid of Starmer's Britain. They are laughing at it. But heroes are rising from the rubble of this establishment's making. Those 9 generals are heroes. They have risked their careers, their pensions, and their reputations to speak a truth the establishment wants to bury. Heroes like the bikers from Rolling Thunder, who descend on London in their thousands, their engines a roar of defiance. Nigel Farage and Reform UK are heroes, for they have been warning for years that the European Convention on Human Rights was a Trojan horse. They told us it would lead to this exact chaos, crippling our ability to control our borders and neutering our armed forces, and they were ridiculed for it. Now, their warnings have become our terrifying reality. And the greatest hero of all is Alec Penstone, the 100-year-old veteran who looked this country in the eye and delivered the most devastating verdict of all. This man, who fought on the beaches of Normandy, who saw his friends die for the freedom of this continent, was asked a simple question. Was the sacrifice of his friends, of his entire generation, worth it for the country we have today? He paused. And with the clarity that only a century of life can bring, he simply said, no. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now. That is the final, damning judgment on Keir Starmer and the entire political elite. They have taken the country that better men died for, and they have broken it. They have betrayed the sacred promise made between a nation and its defenders. So I ask you this. When our most decorated generals, the men who have commanded our armies in the field, publicly declare that the Prime Minister's policies are a direct threat to the survival of this nation, who do you believe? The politician in the £1,000 suit, smiling for the cameras as he sells you out to his friends in Strasbourg? Or the soldier who stands ready to die for you? The battle for Britain is no longer being fought in faraway lands. It is being fought here, at home. It is a battle for our soul, for our history, for the very definition of who we are. They have fired the first shot in this culture war against our own defenders. The question is, how will we answer? The establishment wants you silent. They are counting on your apathy. Prove them wrong. Sharing this isn't just clicking a button. It is an act of rebellion. It is our digital samizdat, passing the truth from hand to hand because the official channels are lying to us. Force your friends and your family to see the truth they are being denied. In the comments below, tell me one thing: is this the greatest betrayal of our armed forces in modern history?